All right, I think we will get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Virtual Green Room. Whether you're a repeat attendee or a first-time listener, we're really happy to have you. Just a few words of introduction for myself, since I'm new to this space. My name is Lev Mamuya. I am a music writer, arts administrator, and cellist by training as well, based in LA, and I do LA coverage for The Voice. So it's lovely to be in this space with you all and to be conducting this virtual green room. My interviewee today needs pretty much no introduction, but in like a fit of ego, I will attempt one anyway that does him justice. If you're anything like me, you can remember where you were in 2015 when you saw that first family performance of Chardas that kind of rocketed the Kanneh-Masons to a little bit of virality. But since then, Sheku has become one of the most visible global ambassadors and standard bearers for the cello. In 2016, he became the first Black artist to win the BBC's Young Artist Award. He's since released 4 best-selling albums and 3 EPs, become a member of the British Empire, and he played at Meghan and Harry's wedding. No big deal. He's also a talented songwriter, a generous collaborator, and a wonderful curator of repertoire across genres. We're looking forward to hearing Sheku play Shostakovich's first cello concerto beginning tomorrow through October 8th with the LA Phil, and also to his return to California with a November 1st recital on the Cal Performances series, featuring the music of Bach, Simcock, Britten, Brewer, Finnis, and Casado. Today, we'll talk for just under an hour. As you probably saw in the slideshow, feel free to push any questions that you might have into the chat. We can't promise absolutely that we'll get to each and every one, but we'll keep our eyes out for things that perhaps a lot of people are asking might integrate naturally into our conversation. So just a reminder there to feel free to make use of the chat. In any case, I think that's as good a place as any to jump in. And so I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today, Sheku, and for making time in your exceedingly busy schedule. How are you doing today?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to make time for this, and it's wonderful to meet.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Is that just me?
I don't know. It seems.
Gotcha. I am going to dispense with the AirPods and see if that helps.
Hello.
Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
Is that better? Wonderful.
Yes.
It seems. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Wonderful. Apologies, everyone, for the brief technical issues. Had a kind of quite the longitudinal relationship with the piece. Can you talk a little bit about your feelings about it? If you're excited to play it again, how it's been living with that repertoire?
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece of music. It has such a powerful impact, I think, in performance, and requires this sort of stamina of intensity throughout the piece. And I find that, once you sort of lock into that and really have that focus, it's a wonderful feeling. But it is very, it takes a lot of energy, and so that's something in the sort of preparations form the piece I think about. And it's a piece of course, a lot of technical difficulties in the writing, but I think for me the biggest challenge is maintaining this continued intensity and line throughout the piece. That's a wonderful challenge. Yeah,
really beautifully said. I find that piece so intense, and it can be alternately severe or very wounded and quiet and inward, but I think that idea of trying to keep up that energetic thread is definitely something that resonates with me, having played that concerto as well. One thing that I think draws so many people to your playing is whether you're playing Bob Marley or a song that you wrote or Shostakovich concerto, it all is suffused with that same sense of kind of irrepressible energy and voice. You seem kind of to function almost, like I said, as this global ambassador for the cello, almost in that tradition of Yo-Yo Ma and so on and so on. So I'm wondering whether you could talk a little bit about your musical omnivorousness as well. Your latest album, Song, like I mentioned, features a song that you wrote among other non-classical selections alongside classical music. So I'm wondering whether you can speak a little bit about how that practice of arranging and taking up different musics for the cello started for you, and how you kind of see your voice across all of these different mediums or genres, if you'd like to call them that.
Yeah, I would say that I suppose most of my um, access to music is through listening. When I listen to a
Mm,
lot of music and watch a lot of live performances and so on. I think these days it's so yeah, in a way, quite easy to have access to such a wealth and
totally.
variety of unbelievable music. And so I just spend my time exploring that, and some things leave an impression on me in different ways, and some um, also inspire me to come up with something like an arrangement of a song that's been in my mind, or it can inspire a particular sound that I choose. Or choose to search for on the cello,
Yeah,
or inspire me to write a piece of music as well. So it's all yeah. I'm grateful for the access to so much amazing music and for all of these
totally.
wonderful musicians out there.
Yeah. I think that's something that's so common across musicians, is just that sense of we're always listening and we're always looking for things that move us, and then how we might translate that into our own practice. Did that kind of theme of listening to a variety of different musics, would you say that came mostly from inside of you, or was that a part of your kind of family's culture growing up? What type of music would you listen to around the home?
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say, came first from my parents and and the rest of my family. We listened to a lot of music. They'd play a lot of like records and CDs growing up of a variety of music, and in the car as well, we listened to um, lots of things, a lot of classical music, a lot of reggae, in particular would be the standout genres, but um, lots of other things as well.
Yeah, that's really lovely. And, not to be too redundant here, but I find it very inspiring and courageous that you've made such a public effort to integrate your love for these musics into your career. I know, many performer friends who have kind of an omnivorous listening diet, but stick very much to kind of the brand identity of being a classical performer and what that's meant historically. Can you talk a little bit about your thought process of, you know, when you came to that decision of wanting to be known for many different types of music as a part of your public profile, and how you see that kind of factoring into what being a classical musician is becoming in 2023?
Yeah, I think I enjoy playing um, the music that I enjoy. It sounds very um, simple, but I think in my opinion, in order to really get the most out of classical music, one has to have a level of focus and persistence and diligence
Hmm.
to this genre of music. And so I do need to spend a lot of time with the cello and with this classical repertoire, and I have done
Yeah,
and will continue to do. But if there are enough hours in the day, there is also time to explore other styles of music, and that's something I really enjoy. And I think my classical playing and technique perhaps allows me the possibility to explore these varieties of music with the facility that I have learned through a classical training. And perhaps these other styles of music will inspire or influence my imagination of sound and expression and all those kinds of things. It's not that by playing other styles of music, it's necessarily going to influence the
absolutely.
others, but I think your imagination is fed through exploring all of these different things, and I think that's important as a musician in however
Yeah,
way you access that.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's so refreshing and so necessary to see not just, concert program curators, but also musicians and active performers really being at the vanguard of that, idea of expanding a little bit what's heard from the concert stage, and playing, like you said, I think simply but beautifully, like the music that you like. So I think that's really beautiful. Um, you also mentioned, I think, kind of that those two factors of kind of your classical training and that technical bedrock, and then, having that under your feet, being a tool that allows you to kind of explore more broadly with your imagination different types of sounds that you might want to encompass. I'm wondering whether you could speak a little bit more about your time at the Royal Academy. I know that since 2022, you've been actually back there as a teacher quite quickly, and just maybe even being on both sides of that equation as a student there and then as a teacher, talking a little bit about how that kind of training program and even any of your music education from before has kind of allowed that exploration for you.
Yeah, I've been I was at the Royal Academy of Music. I first went there when I was about 9 years old. They have a primary sort of Saturday music school called Primary Royal Academy of Music, and then a junior department. And then I did my bachelor's and master's, and now I'm a visiting professor. So I've spent, I would say, most of my musical life, and actually most of my life, as a student at the Royal Academy, and it's a very, very special place. And as being there and studying there has, of course, had a massive impact on my understanding of music and all those things. I think I was really grateful at the primary academy on the emphasis on chamber music. And so from a very young age, I was playing in quartets and piano trios and things. And that being such an important part of the education, I was really, really grateful for, because there's something wonderful about the supportive and sort of understanding role of the cello, particularly in string quartets. That is vital sort of experience and information to learn and to be part of a small ensemble and work together very closely with other musicians, whilst having to maintain that sort of responsibility for your individual sound and individual part. I think that's something that chamber music is great for. And so I did a lot of that growing up, and I had wonderful cello teachers, three in my life: Sarah Houston, Ben Davis, and now Hannah Roberts. And they were all musicians who were incredibly inspiring, incredibly persistent in lessons and not letting things go, but also always encouraging me to think about things properly and explore things properly and spend time with things with a sort of level of interest and enthusiasm and hunger, and that is something that I'm also really, really, really grateful for in my training, having these three teachers who inspired me so much.
Yeah, definitely. You're speaking my language, on my side of the pond, so to speak. I was at New England Conservatory's prep program on Saturdays for a long time, and then ended up doing a bachelor's and a master's there. And I think that there's something, so incredibly supportive about having that infrastructure around you. And also just want to affirm how important I think quartet playing is for a cellist. It really teaches you to be inquisitive and analytical and all of these different wonderful things. I'm wondering whether you could talk a little bit more broadly about collaboration. Obviously, you're quite known for collaborating with your family and also generously with a host of other musicians and performers. And hearing you talk about kind of that sense of community and communal learning that you got from your chamber music education, I'm wondering whether that idea of being able to collaborate and express yourself with others explicitly factored into kind of your thought process as you began to think about, maybe I will become a professional musician. And whether rooted in that kind of collaborative spirit or not, I'm wondering whether you could talk a little bit about that thought process, whether it was just a single moment where you decided or something more longitudinal, and how your education, your family environment, all these factors might have played into that.
Yeah, I would say there wasn't necessarily a definitive moment that made me decide that being a cellist musician is something that I sort of want to do. But I do think that I really enjoy all of the different elements that it entails. I enjoy the process of practicing and being by myself and exploring and discovering something on my own. And I enjoy learning from these great musicians and teachers as well. I enjoy listening to music and going to watch concerts. I enjoy being on stage and performing and sharing a piece of music that I've spent a lot of time with on my own, with an audience full of people I love. Traveling to lots of different places and meeting people and different musicians and collaborating and all of these things. And so I think that, yeah, that has kind of always been the case and my interest. And so it felt very natural to pursue a career in music and on the cello. And I'm grateful that I'm able to now spend most of my days with music. It's really great.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's so lovely when, you can feel that alignment with just what you like to do, and you get to do it, and people are happy to hear that from you. So that's really beautiful. I'm wondering whether we could toggle back just for a moment, because we've got a great question in the chat here that kind of related a little bit to that discourse we were having about your life as a student and now your life as a teacher. You talk, about these driven teachers in your life who really are pushing you towards musical excellence. I think you might have even used the phrase, teaching properly. And now that you're a teacher, I'm wondering whether you can talk a little bit about, you've talked about kind of that consciousness of yourself in the practice room and how much you enjoy kind of getting to the root of things. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how now you're passing that on to students. I know that you're also involved with music masters, and so clearly music education is something that's very important to you too.
Yeah, and I think I'm now I have started teaching a lot more. I really realize how difficult it is to be a really great teacher, because every student is different, and what we're teaching is so complex, and there is so much that happens that is quite internal and perceptible, and also personal. And so to teach that can become very difficult. Of course, there is a wealth of technical knowledge that one can draw upon when teaching. And I suppose often the difficulty is being able to perceive things and find what is going to be most helpful, and to fuel the student with this feeling of constantly wanting to explore and to go deeper into what they are doing, and to be interested, and giving them the tools to be able to search for those things is important as a teacher. And I really enjoy and learn a lot from teaching now, and having to really understand something for myself and to be able to explain it clearly. I think that's often a challenge, but a great one to have.
I think I don't know, it is such a, from the interpretive to the technical, there's so much that's going on both inside one's head and even in your muscles and in your body while you're playing, that, translating that to people, and also, like you said, I think providing them with that technical scaffolding and rigor without trying to step on what their individual voice is, can definitely be a challenge. And that's lovely to hear.
Yeah, right, and also I think I was just going to say, I think the challenge often is because there aren't many words to describe sound other than loud and quiet. All of the other words we have to use are like a secondary sort of thing. Like we use texture and color, and then more broadly sort of actual characters and emotions and images and all of these things. So you have to use a lot of analogies, things that are outside of what are in the text, because there aren't really words to describe the actual sounds that we make. It's what the images that they conjure up that is important in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful point, and something that I haven't thought enough about, but is so resonant, that idea that it's all indirect explanation in a certain sense, and trying to get inside someone's sound or someone's head is very difficult. Yeah. Wonderful. I'm wondering if we can switch gears a little bit again, because people are just submitting wonderful questions in the chat, and so I continue to get distracted by them. But to kind of pivot back to the performing side of your schedule and what you're doing now, we talked a little bit about the Shostakovich, which is coming up tomorrow. I'm wondering if you could also talk a little bit about the music that's going to be on your Cal Performances recital. As I understand it, there's a piece on there, or a set of pieces that was written for you by a young composer. And someone has asked a really wonderful question here about how you commission new pieces for solo cello or chamber music even, how that kind of factors into your practice, whether you'd like to be able to do that more. And yeah, just wondering whether you could speak a little bit to even your relationship with this piece that will be on the Cal Performances program.
Yeah, so it's I really enjoyed putting together this program because it's all for completely solo cello. And
Yeah.
there's something really, really powerful about just the cello. On stage, of course, I have to have Bach in there because the idea of solo cello playing, I think, really comes from these solo suites. And so I'm going to play the second suite in D minor, which is my favorite. I think the most sort of intimate, perhaps, of the six.
Yeah, I agree.
Solo suites, and has a wonderful darkness to it. So I'll begin with that, and then play a piece by the jazz pianist Gwilym Simcock called "Prayer for the Senses," which is a piece that he wrote for me a few years ago. And this was commissioned when I was at the Royal Academy of Music in my final year. They did this series of commissions to celebrate the 200 years of the school. And they said they commissioned 200 pieces and paired me with a couple of composers. And one of the pieces that came out of that is this Prayer for the Senses by Gwilym Simcock, which is wonderful. And it's great to have a piece by a jazz pianist. And so I was, really excited to see what he would come out with. And it's a wonderful piece of music. And then I'll play the first suite by Benjamin Britten for solo cello, which is an incredible piece that really, really, really explores the unbelievable range of the instrument and range of expressions, and has this wonderful shape, unique shape to it. It has many movements which are punctuated with this recurring chorale thing, which is great. And then in the second half, I will open with a piece also written for me by the Cuban composer Leo Brouwer, who has mostly written music for guitar, for classical guitar, and so it was great to have this piece for solo cello written. He also wrote a sonata for me for cello and guitar, which I played with the guitarist recently. And it's wonderful music, a wonderful mix of very sort of like ancient sounding things in the music, and this sort of like powerful groundedness mixed with a sort of intense sense of exploration. So I love this, and I really, really love this sonata. Then I'm going to play 5 preludes by Edmund Finnis, which were also written for me. Edmund is a young British composer and writes so wonderfully for the cello. He played the cello as well himself, and so really understands the sort of like feeling of the subtle differences in the sound that one can get from this instrument. And then I finish with Gaspar Casado's Suite for solo cello, which is great fun to play. And I'm looking forward to this program.
Absolutely. Man, it sounds thrilling, but you certainly do not shy away from the programs that take lots of stamina from you between this and the Shostakovich. Yeah. Well, we got another question in the chat that I thought, could be beautifully illuminating for non-musicians or non-cellists, but someone was asking whether you could speak to that physicality, that element of your cello playing. I know, it might sound silly, but you travel a lot, your schedule is incredibly busy, and I'm wondering whether you can talk kind of a little bit about that physical side of it that perhaps people don't get to see a lot. I know when I was in music school, there were certainly repetitive stress injuries, tendonitis, things like this are quite common. So there are really some physical demands. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about how you balance kind of a busy performing schedule and how you kind of keep yourself in that playing shape.
Yeah, it is quite demanding, as you say, a lot of travel and things like that, and also the physical demands of playing many hours a day can be strenuous, and so I do try to be careful with my technique and make sure that things are working in the best ways that they can, and to really really think about that, because of course in performance there are some things that you don't want to necessarily be thinking about, and so that's where the preparation, I think, is really key, and solving those things in the practice room, and I think also just as much as possible eating well and sleeping well and exercising well. I think those things are really healthy and helpful for anyone,
Totally.
but, especially with something that is so mentally and physically demanding. I think to feel as healthy and well as possible, of course, is really, really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And I think, from the outside, like for instance, with the Shostakovich concerto, I feel like perhaps for a non-musician, they think, well, you played it so many times, you clearly know it so well, maybe you can just kind of sit down and do it in a certain sense. But I think speaking to that idea of the fact that all of us as musicians are, engaged in that continual process of work and self-assessment, in the practice room, just to make sure that exactly we're setting ourselves up for success in a sustainable way is really important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, when you get to that performance day, which you've got one coming up tomorrow, whether you could take us through a little bit step by step, whether there are kind of any day of rituals or steps. This is another question, excellent question from the chat, but kind of steps that most effectively prepare you mentally to perform. And yeah, what you're what's going through your head as you're backstage and on that day.
Yeah, it's I think that what I found often is most helpful is to have a good night's sleep the night before
Yeah.
a concert, which is not always possible, and sometimes you just can't sleep, and that's also different. But as much as that is possible, I think having a good night's sleep, because then yeah, you're able to have as much sort of focus and intensity in the performance if you're well rested, having sort of eating well throughout the day. And I like to go for a walk at some point as well. I think fresh air is really important, because so much of what I do is like inside in a practice room or inside in a concert hall, and to do something outside, running around and walking, I think that is really, really, really helpful. I find I will practice a lot on the day of a concert as well, because yeah, it's to get me really as close to my instrument as possible on the day of the concert. I think is important. I think there are some things that you can learn and improve and fix on a few hours of practice, so you can improve really on the day of a concert. But I think the practice on the day of the concert, for me at least, is more about being really close to the instrument and feeling free and comfortable with it. And yeah, I think I try not to have too many things that I need pre-performance, just because everywhere I play is different, and you can't really guarantee the same.
Definitely.
It might be, it's going to be a different time of day, different weather, different different food, different all those kinds of things, and so different amounts of time and space, and so try to be as sort of like accepting of that as possible, and not too rigid with what I need before concert, other than some food and some sleep.
I'm on a couple of NEC teachers, and I remember kind of walking around that space with him, being incredibly nervous as like a 10 or 11-year-old, and hearing him say that before every concert he would spend just a little time walking around the hall and think to himself, okay, no matter what it looks like, this hall is my living room for the day. This is where I'm going to choose to feel comfortable, and this is where this performance will happen. And I think that that idea of just being able to settle yourself through all of these different variables is really interesting and really important. You talked about that idea of just on the day of the performance, spending some time getting close to your instrument. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your specific instrument, how long you've been playing it, and kind of what that relationship is like in terms of it really not to use the word in both a literal and metaphorical sense, but it is the instrument of, your expression. It's what's allowing you to get things out. So wondering if you could talk a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah. I play on a Matteo Goffrilla cello, made in 1700 in Venice, and it's incredible cello. So I'm really, really
Yeah.
grateful to be able to play on it. I think the range of sounds and possibilities on the instrument are seemingly endless, and that's really exciting because it
Yeah.
means that I can constantly be searching for things with this instrument, and it has a wonderful, rich and dark, earthy quality to the sound
Yeah.
as well. And even in the very high register, you always feel this support and roundness
Yeah.
around it, and so it's a joy to play on and to spend time with. And I've been
Yeah.
playing on it now for about 3 years.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think that is just such a picture of the musician's life that perhaps for the non-pianists among us, at least a little, that you develop such kind of an intimate back and forth and relationship with your instrument. So it's really lovely to hear about. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, maybe we can change tacks again, motivated by these lovely questions that are coming through in the chat here. Maybe you could talk actually first across, maybe some of these concerts that you're doing in California, or more broadly, whether there are particular pieces of repertoire that you love playing specifically on your instrument, and maybe if you could talk a little bit more broadly about what repertoire is really exciting you right now in terms of playing, and then
Mm.
maybe even some of the stuff that you're listening to that's really exciting you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with the cello, there's such a wonderful wealth of repertoire that we
Yeah.
have access to, and wonderful music that is still being written and will be written in the future. So I think it's really exciting as a cellist to be able to explore um, this and be obsessed with different bits of repertoire over time. I love early 20th century music and some wonderful British music from then.
Yeah.
Frank Bridge. Frank Bridge has a wonderful cello sonata and some piano trios. Yeah, really, really beautiful. Music, of course, Elgar is from
Yeah.
that time as well, and how that then progressed to the music of Benjamin Britten, which is incredible and really, really, really colorful and clever and witty and all of those things. I love that repertoire. Shostakovich is one of my favorite composers.
Yeah.
But there are lots of composers sort of around Shostakovich as well that I've enjoyed exploring, like Hatachuri and Weinberg has a wonderful cello concerto.
Yeah.
I'm going to be learning next year.
Lovely.
Yeah, I mean, this is just things that come to mind. But I think that there's such a wealth of wonderful repertoire that I will take time to explore.
No, we really are blessed as cellists in that sense. And I would just add a second exhortation to anyone in this chat, and to all the people asking these lovely questions. If you're not familiar with it, to check out some of these composers, the music of Bridge and of Weinberg and Khachaturian, because I think they deserve more exposure, and they deserve, more knowledge. It's also really lovely to hear you talk about this kind of affinity that you have for British music and being a champion of that as a Brit. And I'm wondering if you could talk both about your British identity, but maybe a little bit more broadly about how you feel that your identity in total, being a British cellist, being a Black cellist, factors into how you present yourself and how people receive you. I think there was a really lovely kind of a note in the chat from a person of color who is in their 40s, started learning cello recently, and asked how, given the kind of relative underrepresentation of Black and Brown people in classical music spaces, what are some of the ways in which you think about that when you show up in these spaces, where maybe you're the only person of color, or one of just a few? I think, for all of us who have embarked upon careers in majority white spaces or industries, there is often that pressure of feeling like you're the representative, right? And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you've kind of maybe dealt with putting some of that pressure to the side, and just how you kind of conceive of yourself in all of these spaces.
Yeah, I think that for me, I mean, how I got into um, music for me is really important, and it came from just listening at home, and so it felt that I was able to feel and get very close to this music in a comfortable space with my family, and feel really,
Yeah.
really at home and close to it. And then in Nottingham in the UK, where I grew up, had this wonderful concert hall, and they had this scheme for I think under 25 years old. So anyone at school basically could go to these concerts for £5 or less. And
Yeah,
so
lovely.
I spent a lot of time going to watch unbelievable concerts. And these tickets were always on the front, like few rows as well. So you'd be really
Yeah.
close to the orchestra and the soloist or whatever. And that had a massive impact on me. And I suppose there are pieces of repertoire that you hear much more in certain places, and not so much in others. So Frank Bridge, as you mentioned, is probably someone that you hear more in the UK than anywhere else, because for obvious, sort of obvious
Yeah.
reasons. But then for me, growing up with this music and really loving it, it feels nice to be able to then perform it in lots of different places and sort of share the wealth of repertoire that perhaps hasn't traveled as much as it could have done. But yeah, I think I am very aware of the lack of diversity in classical music, and I think a lot of it is to do with the access to education, certainly in the UK, and that's a real shame to see, and to see in the UK actually decline in music education in schools is really terrifying, but I think one of my roles as a performer is hopefully to inspire audiences in many different ways, and hopefully for a young black child to see the cello and classical music is something that they can be interested in and explore. But that can only work in combination with the access and opportunity in education. And so that's where a lot of my focus goes towards fighting for this, because that's what can make what I am able to do possible. And so, yeah, that's sort of my focus.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful answer. I think totally it's important always to recognize those systemic factors that are, larger than us and require structural change. I think that idea of diminishing music education programs, certainly, if you think it through, it restricts who can access these things if, music education is paid and not free. But I think also that idea of being able to have that positive take on your role as an ambassador, and kind of thinking about how you can function as an inspiration, I think is really wonderful to hear as well. And I think that I know young people who have seen you in concert, on Tiny Desk, on the internet, and I think that not only having you at the vanguard of this field, but having you kind of explore and share your music in so many different spaces really does a lot for that sense of exposure. Yeah, that's really lovely. Man, which is not even to mention, your wonderful recordings and all of that. I know we just left repertoire land a little bit, but something I have been really enjoying listening to lately is your latest CD, Song. I know we touched on it briefly earlier, but I'm wondering whether you can talk a little bit more in depth about how that project came together for you.
It was a really enjoyable project and album to put together. It was very much, for me, led by what I was, just by what I wanted to play, really, and what I was listening to, and very much led by the collaborations that I had on this album. A variety of different sort of instrumentations in styles. I did some pieces for cello ensemble, so I made some arrangements of Bach, and then was collaborating with a jazz pianist and played Crimea River and some other improvisations, and with my sister, who's a classical pianist, and played some Mendelssohn, Beethoven, and then also with a wonderful South African soprano. We did a piece by Massenet, and with another pianist, Messiaen, and I wrote a song with a wonderful pop singer, Zach Gable. And so there's some songwriting in there as well, and some beautiful folk tunes from Ireland and Wales as well. So it's just kind of sounds like an incoherent mixture of stuff, but I think for me the I guess core thing around it was this idea of vocal music and the cello being such a vocal instrument, but placing it in many different contexts and different styles was really enjoyable, and perhaps yeah, and something that I didn't sort of I didn't have the full album and the picture of it at the start. I sort of ideas came as the process went on, and that was a nice way of doing things as well.
Yeah, it feels very natural to hear about that idea of music you had on your mind and this theme of the cello as a voice, but also how that kind of deepened and was guided kind of by the collaborations that you embarked upon for that album, definitely. I'm wondering whether maybe you might spare a couple of minutes to talk about maybe some of your earliest collaborators in your siblings, and talking about kind of what those relationships are like as you all are kind of in different places in the music educational and music professional landscape, and how often you still get to play with them, and how much you enjoy that.
Yeah, it was great to grow up with musicians surrounding me and learning at the same time. It meant that, you know, practice growing up didn't feel like a isolated or lonely task, because everyone around me was doing it, and it was something to talk about and share. And we played a lot together as children, particularly for me in a piano trio with my eldest sister and elder brother. So we explored a lot of that repertoire from young, and that was really fun, and I'm grateful for that, and to have people that I could play to for advice as well. Growing up, that was really essential. We used to do this thing on Sundays sometimes, where everyone would have to perform a piece that they were working on and give each other
A mock jury
feedback. Yeah. It was really helpful to sort of have that regular opportunity to do that. You know, and I still play a lot, particularly with my older sister and older brother, but my younger siblings as well, and it's always really enjoyable.
Yeah, it's really lovely, and you know, I will temper it, but I would be lying if I said I didn't feel some jealousy. I have as well a musical sibling, a lovely younger brother who's just starting his undergraduate degree as a violist. But I can't imagine what a resource and how nice it must have been just to have those partners to explore a new repertoire with, and to have that kind of larger community of people just invested in your musical growth. My parents also, you know, have some amateur experience being instrumentalists, my mother specifically, and I would drag them downstairs and do the same thing every weekend of listen to me play. We're gonna do comments. Sometimes I'd even have them, you know, write little things if I were preparing for some sort of performance exam in school. And so it's lovely to revel in that nostalgia for me and hear about some of those similarities. So thanks for letting me do that. Wonderful. Well, I just want to be conscious of time here. I know we are approaching 12:50, and we want to shut this down kind of by 1 on the dot, just in understanding of Sheku's busy schedule. I just wanted to reprompt everyone again if there are any questions that we haven't gotten to. I know that undoubtedly I have missed some here as we've been talking and I've been scrolling. Feel free to repost them in the chat. And if anyone has any kind of new questions and conclusions, some areas they wish they had gotten to hear Sheku talk a little bit more about, I invite you to put those questions in the chat now as well. I will just wait a couple of minutes and scroll through here. Oh, that's a wonderful one, and apologies for missing that. We've got one that says, any advice for a new adult beginner, which I think is,
Okay.
yeah, a different class of student than, a younger student starting out.
Yeah, it's great. I always love hearing about adults also learning as a beginner because um, yeah, music is and learning an instrument is something that can um, yeah, teach you a lot and feel you with so much um, wonder and beauty, and there's no reason that you can't get a lot from it as an adult. Um, any advice? I would say um, I find like watching I don't know, YouTube videos of cellists playing and listening. Um, of well, I'm not actually not sure if you're necessarily a cellist of any instrument. I'm watching sort of videos of um, the sort of top performers playing. I find can give you a lot of information and inspiration. Watching concerts live as well is a great way of doing that. And being patient because I think there isn't a shortcut, at least that I know of, for practicing and for so I think being patient with that and being persistent with that in terms of practicing as regularly as possible. That's the way I think to um, improve, but it does take time and um, kind of moves at different paces as well. It's not that you have this feeling of improvement at a constant rate, even if you are practicing constantly. I think there are moments of sort of faster improvement and slower improvement just based on the different challenges that come up. And so I think just being patient with that and persistent.
Yeah, I think that's something that's super important to keep in mind and maybe less legible for non-musicians, that idea that even if your practice is always constant, maybe your progress is not always constant. And I think that, at least I have certainly been there of struggling with a technical issue or a piece of musical expression for a long time until it just clicks one day,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that work I've been putting in suddenly decides to manifest itself. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's
exactly.
that is really crucial advice for,
Yeah.
staying persistent and keeping at it. But if you do find that shortcut to practicing, please do let me know because I would love to know about it. Um, you mentioned a little bit also that idea of like listening to top performers and using that as a tool of inspiration, perhaps of motivation. I'm wondering whether nowadays there are some musicians, cellists or not, whose playing has really been inspiring you, that you've been resonating with, or whether, that's still a factor in your musical life. I imagine now that, you're a professional with your own career, probably your relationship has changed a little bit to how you listen to different people. But yeah, just wondering whether that's still, kind of a part of your practice.
Yeah, I feel very lucky, and I live in London, in the UK, and there are constantly amazing concerts going on in various recital halls and symphony concert halls as well. And so when I'm at home, most evenings I go to watch something, and it's wonderful. So many inspiring concerts and new pieces of repertoire to me. Um, Seeing some of my favorite musicians perform as well. Of the cellist, Stephen Isserlis is someone I really love the playing of, and learn a lot from watching him play, um, and many others. And I think I'm grateful to be in a city where it is possible to see some amazing, wonderful music when I'm there.
Yeah, I think that idea of just being around those spaces and being able to have proximal access to those types of performances is so important. And I think it makes a lot of sense to me too, incidentally, that you love
Mm.
Israelis, because I think hearing you talk a little bit about Shostakovich before and that idea of the maintenance of energy, that's always what I find so startlingly impressive about his playing. So it's good to know there's another Israelis fan out there. Um, Going back to Shostakovich, actually, and I thought this was kind of a lovely question. As you are anticipating getting on the stage tomorrow, I'm wondering whether you could talk a little bit about how you connect with the orchestra as a soloist. Obviously,
Mm.
you put so much time and interpretive thought into the crafting of your solo line, but then when you sit down there with an orchestra and with a conductor, especially one with as towering a stature as Dudamel, I'm wondering whether you could talk a little bit about how you adjust, how they adjust to you, and kind of what that give and take process is like.
Yeah, it's a fun process. It's different each time depending on the conductor and how they are in the
Yeah,
orchestra. And I love that variety of ways of working and sort of thoughts, and that's, yeah, it's really enjoyable um to have that process. And someone like Dudamel, who has a wonderful, I think, intensity and energy and love and enthusiasm for the music. That's really inspiring to be
yeah,
next to, and the sound of an orchestra like the LA Phil, which has such a richness and an intensity, which I think is great for the music of Shostakovich. Means that, yeah, it fuels me with a lot of energy, and my role as a soloist also is to hopefully fuel the people around me with energy and to motivate the orchestra and bring them together on that piece. And so, yeah, it's a really enjoyable process, and you know, the rehearsal, I think, is such an important thing, and it's where we get to know each other as musicians. Um, and then the concert also, there is this still room for exploration. I think that's important to keep, and so to be alive and as present as possible in the concert, I think is key as well. If Because often with concerto performances, it's with an orchestra you don't necessarily know well, or haven't had the time to get to know well, and so it's quite like an intense and brief relationship. Sometimes, hopefully, over time, you come back many times and get to know them well. There are a few orchestras in the UK that I know very well by now, but that's been because of many times coming back, and so you have to be very alive, alert, and present on stage in the rehearsal to get the most out of that experience.
yeah. I think it's a really beautiful answer. And I certainly, being LA based, will be in the audience one of these nights, and I'm so looking forward to hearing how your energy and Dudamel's energy and the energy of the Phil pair together in service of this piece. I think it should be really exciting.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I do want to be conscious again of letting you get to, whether it's rehearsal or a nice long walk or whatever you need to get to. So I think this green room event is scheduled to close in a couple of minutes. So I just wanted to take another moment before we all have to log off to give another hearty thank you to Sheku. It is absolutely insane that you took time out of your day, the day before a concert with the LA Phil, to talk to us. But I know we are so glad that you did. And thanks to everyone who has attended today. If you're not already planning to, I would beyond encourage you to go see Sheku this weekend in LA, or if you're based in the Bay Area, on November 1st for that Cal Performances recital. Just a couple more notes. If you'd like to revisit anything from today's conversation, a recording of the event will be available on the Classical Voices website in a few days. So certainly, in addition to enjoying those concerts, feel free to look out on the website for the recording of this event as well. I think on that note, we'll wrap up. I don't know. I know that you can see the chat as well, Sheku, and you can see how many admirers and how many people you've touched that are in this chat, and that we're so excited to hear from you. So I know that there'll definitely be people from here at both your LA Phil concert and at the Cal Performances concert, and I know that it's not just me who's so excited to hear you soon.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, and for everyone who asked questions as well, and listened to me ramble on about music. But it's been really fun to chat to you. So
yeah, it's been really nice to chat. All right. Well, I will let Sheku go. I will stay in the chat just for a couple of minutes until 1 p.m. But I think this is where we will lay this event to rest. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Yeah, thank you so much for attending.